That's not going to stop a benzel, is it?
Benzel. Oh, you frame skipped. What are you doing, buddy? Hey, Benzel.
That little benzel was proper cute, wasn't it? I hope they stop this into the garden. What? How you all doing? Apologies, I'm going to rehash yesterday, because I don't think I did a particularly good job of it. Although, I doubt I'm going to do a particularly good job of it today either, because I've been distracted by benzels, been watching things about space, and my thoughts have been stretched out over the course of the day. And realistically, as I say to people, when you think of something, get it out there, revise it, get it out there, and then be done with it. If you have processed it more than 3 times, chances are, if you're spitting it out there, it's going to be shite and all over the place. Oh dear. But I was just trying to think of my mood yesterday. Coconut. It's annoying me that things are going to waste. I have a full bore, big boy, beefy setup with decent kit in it, and it just ain't getting used. Every single time I think I have the opportunity to use it, I may have the opportunity to use it, but I never use it to its fullest. What I will talk about here is probably going to just cover, like, I don't know, live streaming as an example, okay? Or video stuff as an example. Because I think that's one thing that, given that I post videos on, stupid videos mind you, on video platforms and I live stream, it's something that I think people would probably understand. I have been posting videos on these platforms, on the internet, for years. Since before YouTube even existed, I had my own personal website, and it was fucking expensive to run, and hosting videos in anything over standard def was just no. In fairness, we weren't shooting in anything other than standard def. So you were talking over 20 gigs for an hour of footage back in the day, and it was an absolute storage nightmare. That was on DV tape. I wish I still had half of those tapes, but you know, I got into live streaming quite early too, but not for gaming, for radio, podcasting, you know, talk shows. And that was really cool, like really fun back in the day. But no machine was particularly powerful, so you had to have multiples. I've had a multiple machine streaming rig on and off since day one. We'd have big old mixing boards. So I would actually have a PC for every person in the call. So if I was doing I'm on main host machine, and I'd have, like, if I had a guest, like 2 guests, I'd have 2 separate machines taking in a video feed and an audio feed, and that would go into a mixing board and then into the main PC. That was expensive to do. Things weren't fleshed out. Like, software was expensive, hardware was expensive. You didn't have consumer level kit yet, so you'd buy, you know, professional or prosumer level gear, and again, not cheap. But I absolutely loved it, and I really wanted to show people what you could do with it. We did loads of really cool stuff. Like, before the Stream Deck existed, a lot of us used Korg Nano, like, MIDI controllers. I think it's the Korg Nano. I've still got one up in the loft. Basically, it's just a USB box you plug into your computer, and it's got like faders on it, like audio faders on it, and some like buttons on it, and we'd have scripts tied to it. So like, you would assign a scene to a fader. So instead of like with the Stream Deck, the Elgato Stream Deck, you would push a button and it would run a script and have like OBS or something change its thing. OBS was not a thing. Like, I think most big softwares they were licensed. you'd basically, it was the Stream Deck style thing, but it was homemade. So you could assign like a scene or a camera or a sound effect to a fader, and you'd adjust the fader and it would change, and just really, really cool. But like that wasn't particularly cheap either, just like fade scenes and stuff. Capture cards were still pretty But we made it work. It was great. It was absolutely great. And I didn't really see many people from like the YouTube lands, or at least from gaming lands and that, do anything like what we were doing, podcasty talk showy stuff, for years. Like absolutely years. I remember when Twitch TV became a thing, because I wasn't even primarily on Justin TV, which was the site that Twitch was before it was Twitch. And that was a live streaming platform. And that was a guy with a web camera and a backpack. And I think he had laptops and data cards. I did the same kind of thing, but not with a web camera strapped to my head. I would have laptop and a backpack, Vodafone data cards, like 3G data cards. And I was always mobile. And I would live stream from like my motorcycle and stuff like that. We did moto streams. That was pretty cool. And we streamed. My main place was Ustream. Ustream with custom IRC chat room on my own website. And then Justin TV, when Justin TV was a thing. And then when Twitch became a thing, Twitch. Just thrown out there as well, drones. I really liked drones back in the day, and like drone footage, the idea of aerial footage and photography. And I was there pretty early with a pretty expensive setup, and I got to the point where you had to get a license to use your footage in anything commercial if you wanted to sell anything, because people were flying around like psychopaths and causing trouble. And this is a story of how I start off with a super high-end big boy setup, expensive, and I used to like showing people how to do it because I really enjoyed doing it. And then something had happened and I'd shelve everything. And in the time that I'd shelve things, I'd be helping other people set up. And then I'd fade away. By the time I come back, the atmosphere has changed. Technology's gotten better, hardware's gotten better. My high-end setup that cost multiple thousands of pounds worth of audio gear and microphones and all that kind of stuff, that kind of would drop down to what would then, the consumer level then starts to come in and rise up, and it would drop until you had like this crossover. And my stuff would be going lower, and really what basic consumer could just buy something out of a shop, like, the Elgato Game Capture HD became a thing. AverMedia started getting into the market with the Live Gamer HD, stuff like that. Still fun, but like now, a Yahoo with a £200 console can get into it. Audio stuff, oh man, you'd buy a rack with hardware, compressors on it, like proper compressors and all that kind of stuff. Now, still all in software. I've got like shelves and shelves of equipment up in my loft for things I used to do, like microphones galore, as I say, like audio gear galore, lighting galore. But it's gotten to the point now where it's mainstream. You could buy, like, podcasting was an actual thing. You'd buy a mixing board and loads of microphones, and as I say, like, you'd buy like hardware compressors and stuff like that. If you really wanted to spend the big bucks, you'd get like a Firewire mixer that you'd plug into a PC, and that would output each individual input to its own like wave file, and then you could like edit that and all that kind of stuff. And these were pretty big beefy machines, or you'd need a pretty big beefy machine or multiple machines. And things happened, and I didn't ride the wave. I got there early, but I didn't ride the wave. I told people how cool it was, I got people into it, but I didn't ride it through. Many of my friends do take the mickey a bit. Like, dude, you were there really early on when this was harder to do. No one knows who the fuck you are. And it's like, that's great, that's good, that's not a problem. It just bugs me that I still invest in gear to do things, and then I never use it. I mean, I use it for a lot of stuff. Like, I don't just buy this stuff for live streaming stuff, but like Focusrite, you can now buy just a podcasting box. You don't need all of that equipment that I just mentioned. You can just buy a podcasting box. Like, just a little interface with like dual inputs and like maybe a some dials for built-in compression and all that kind of stuff. OBS is there, and it's matured, and it's got fantastic filters in it, and you've got VST support. And because back in the day, I was always against the idea of using like VSTs. I was just like, nah, mate, you need like hardware, everything. Hardware's always best. I was in like the studio mindset. You need to have a full-blown console with a rack and all that kind of stuff. There was something about a hardware dial versus a software clicky thing that I was just, you know, I keep buying it and then things happen. I keep buying equipment and then things happen and then I shelve it. And that's just exactly what's happening now. Or I lose pieces to it and I'm like, why am I buying more equipment that I shouldn't need to do? You know, I buy this equipment to do X, Y, Z, and something will happen and I'll shelve it, and then I'll go from relatively high end, which realistically you don't need, to through the floor. And it's soul crushing. I'm sat there going, there's like 3, 4, 5 grand's worth of kit here. Am I using 3, 4, 5 grand's worth of kit? Fuck no. You can go out and buy an Elgato Wave 3 now. You don't have to know a damn thing about mic placement or mic presence or compression or anything like that. You can just, or like EQ, if you've got like a Go XLR, it's got all EQ stuff on it. There's stuff with EQ like presets now. You just don't have to know about it. Oh, it was brutal because we've always had, my group, I've always had relatively high quality stuff. Not this is dog shit. But as far as streaming is concerned, streaming has a bit of a ceiling to it. Okay, I've said it before in other videos. Studio is up here, yeah? Streaming's down here, and obviously nothing's like here, okay? There's a hard ceiling to how far you can get your equipment to go for live streaming. So you could buy like a cheap microphone, and that cheap microphone realistically will be just as good as the really, really expensive one because the ceiling is so low. There's only so much you can do with 6 megabits or 8 megabits. There's only so much you can do at 1080p. There's only so much you can do with that bandwidth, with that sample rate and that kind of stuff. There's only so far you can go. So most of my gear was already well over that limit. It was just a case of could I bring out that quality? And for most of my lot, the answer was yes. So even if you looked back at the stuff we were doing back in 2008, 9, 10, 11, I think really like 2010, 2011 was like the big stuff. I don't know, I can't remember that well, but our stuff back then at least sounded as good as a lot of stuff does now. But people just go out and buy a 200 quid box. I've always wanted to show people how to get good results on the cheap too. I've always loved testing new equipment. Just to push it, to see what it does, to see how you can break it. Like I just feel like, again, every single time I sit down and think I'm gonna go, let's do this. And right now I'm using the context of streaming and stuff. It just never happens. I never actually manage to sit down and do it. Something always comes up where things have to be shelved, and then time goes past, and the consumer stuff just gets better and better and better and better. Because I never thought back in the day that you'd be buying, 4K, 60, 4K, or like 120 hertz compliant cards, HDR compliant cards. Not the right words here, but I never thought you'd be doing it. Not at the consumer level. I've watched entire markets form over stuff like YouTube and Twitch, and it's crazy. I'm like, this kind of stuff used to be professional equipment, and now you just buy it from a shop. Now, like, everyone's got one. Like, I remember talking to a lad I used to work with years ago when the 5D2 came out, the Canon 5D Mark II came out. It was like a cinematic, like, that was the camera you wanted to have as an indie filmmaker, right? Because you had interchangeable lenses, it did decent video. I mean, even it was the one, right? And then stuff like that, YouTube becomes a thing. You can upload video for free, and just the market exploded. And when money became a thing on these platforms, fuck me, everyone was in there. Which was kind of sad, really, too, just to see that people were only there for the money. They were only there for the fame. They weren't there to try out the cool new thing. They weren't there for how fun it was and the connections they could make and all that, because that's part of the joy for me. But I always just feel like I'm there to start with, and then by the time I actually get to flex, the whole thing has changed. It's just frustrating. I'm just looking at it going, can I just use this stuff now, please? I've got it. Can I just use it? It's not about gear. Gear isn't going to get you rich. It's not going to get you famous. Just so you know, you need to have, a bit of skill, a bit of personality. You need charisma to carry your ass through, but... sometimes it's just soul crushing. You have that dream and you've got all that anticipation to like just get there and try the new thing. The new thing is so exciting, right? I want to try that. I really want to do that. I really want to try that. And then you get it, and either it falls short because you built it up, or it's almost as soul crushing when you don't actually get to use it how you intended. And not through like a software reason or a hardware incompatibility reason, you just don't get to use it. You had the dream, you got super excited, you hyped yourself up, you get the thing, and then it just crumbles. I made all the right decisions, I think. I'd just like to be able to just sit down and let loose. That is it. I'm tired and I'm stressed, and playing with this kind of stuff has always been a release for me, and I don't get to do it much. So I should cherish the times I do get to do it. But when I see people looking at it for all the wrong reasons, it's just a little sad, That's why you can always go onto eBay, the land of broken dreams, and pick up a setup pretty cheap these days. It's amazing what you can do these days for the money, especially compared to what I had to spend when I started. Podcasting was expensive. The idea of a mobile podcasting setup was, wow. You were talking like Marantz gear. Is it Marantz? Not particularly cheap. Oh no, compact flash cards. Any of you kids know what a compact flash card is? When lighting was big and heavy and hot and expensive. When cheap microphones sounded shit. And now you can just buy full rigs for a few $100. I've set up full rigs for a few $100. Dual PC Linux rigs. Multiple PC rigs for, like I said at the start, each caller has their own individual machine for video and audio. Multiple sound cards in a machine, multiple capture cards in a machine. Capture cards were fucking expensive and generally quite shit. Running DV cameras into computers. And then you have to take a break. Life happens. And you come back and you're like, fuck. It's amazing, but a bit crushing too. And I'd like to actually get some use out of my gear whilst it's still pretty new. Stretch his legs, fucking flex it a bit, push it. But instead I'm just sat here twiddling my thumbs going, oh, well, I could do this, I could do that, and it's just not happening. But we all know that if I actually sit there and do something, it's going to be shit anyway, so... Gonna head off. Just another 20-minute rant that didn't explain the thing. I'm going to be doing Ran Nerds game night later with Ram. I'm amazed by where all this has gone. From what it was to what it is now. To see that some people I knew were so ahead, tech-wise. Entire studios were built around it. And this is over a decade ago. But now it's becoming popular. Now everyone wants to do it. like podcasting and stuff over the last few years, it's really become popular. The SM7B, fucking hell. See that thing everywhere. YouTube and Twitch have just created a whole fucking market. It's beautiful. And it makes me feel so old. Hope you're well. And I'll see you all with a bit of luck in the next one. When I started, there was barely anyone. there was no ninja. No shroud. No summit. I don't actually know who the big streamers are, but hey, they weren't there. See ya. Now everyone's doing it. And you'll never be seen. Well, you will. Just a bit of luck. Plenty of charisma.